Everything changed with just one message, and now the UFC middleweight division is on the edge of another explosive collision. Just weeks after suffering the first defeat of his professional career, Khamzat Chimaev has broken his silence with a direct warning aimed at Sean Strickland, and the words instantly reignited one of MMA's most heated rivalries. "Accept the fight, don't run, I'll beat you anyway." That wasn't just another social media post, it sounded like a promise, and as fans rushed to react, the biggest question suddenly became impossible to ignore. Is this the beginning of the rematch everyone expected, or is an even bigger twist waiting behind the scenes? The rivalry looked finished when the final horn echoed through the arena at UFC 328. Sean Strickland had survived 5 brutal rounds to reclaim the UFC middleweight championship in one of the closest fights of the year. The judges awarded him a split decision victory, ending Chimaev's unbeaten record and taking away the championship that many believed would stay around his waist for years. It wasn't simply a title changing hands, it was the collapse of an aura that had followed Khamzat throughout his entire MMA career. For the first time, Boers walked away from the cage knowing what defeat actually felt like. Yet something unexpected happened immediately after the result. Instead of chaos inside the octagon, the two rivals shared a rare moment of respect. Chimaev even helped place the championship belt around Strickland's waist, leaving many viewers convinced that the bad blood had finally disappeared. The endless insults from the build-up seemed to be over, at least for a while, but appearances can be deceiving. Behind that respectful moment, another story was quietly beginning to unfold. Within days, whispers started spreading that Chimaev wasn't interested in moving on. He wasn't looking for another contender. He wasn't asking for a fresh challenge. His attention stayed locked on one man, Sean Strickland. Reports suggested that people close to Chimaev believed he had unfinished business after the razor-close decision. From their perspective, the outcome settled nothing. They believed another meeting would tell the real story. As speculation continued to grow, fans debated whether the UFC would immediately book the rematch or send Chimaev back into the contender line. Some argued that a former champion deserved another opportunity after such a competitive battle. Others insisted that the division already had hungry contenders waiting for their chance. Every new opinion added more pressure on UFC matchmakers, and the silence from the promotion only made the mystery even bigger. Then another surprise entered the conversation. Shortly after losing the title, there were discussions suggesting Chimaev could abandon the middleweight division altogether and move to light heavyweight. That possibility instantly changed everything. If Boers left the division, the rivalry with Strickland would become unfinished history rather than unfinished business. Fans wondered if the championship clash would remain a one-time event forever. The possibility seemed realistic enough that many believed the rematch had quietly died before negotiations even started. But then came the massive twist. Instead of announcing a new weight class, Khamzat completely reversed the narrative. His focus snapped right back toward the champion. Suddenly, every rumor about changing divisions faded into the background because Chimaev himself made his intentions crystal clear. There would be no distraction, no detour, only Sean Strickland. And then the warning arrived. "Accept the fight, don't run, I'll beat you anyway." The sooner this happens, the easier it will be to breathe. Those few sentences instantly exploded across the MMA community. Supporters praised Chimaev's confidence after experiencing the first setback of his career. Critics questioned whether he had actually earned another title opportunity. Some admired the fearless attitude, while others believed the former champion was trying to pressure the UFC into giving him a shortcut back to gold. The reactions couldn't have been more divided, but what happened next shocked everyone, because attention quickly shifted toward Sean Strickland's side of the story. The champion wasn't exactly rushing to confirm anything. Instead, discussions around his future became more complicated than many expected. Reports surrounding Strickland suggested that physical recovery would play a major role in determining his return timeline. After 5 demanding rounds with one of the most dangerous fighters in the sport, questions emerged about when the champion would actually compete again. That uncertainty created another layer of suspense around the entire situation. If Strickland wasn't ready, would Chimaev have to wait? Or would the UFC decide to move the division forward with another challenger? Those questions became impossible to ignore because middleweight suddenly had multiple contenders watching everything unfold. Every passing day, without an official announcement, increased the tension. Fighters across the rankings understood that one decision from the UFC could completely reshape the championship picture. Some believed activity should matter more than reputation. Others believed a split decision title fight naturally deserved a second chapter. The debate spread far beyond social media and reached analysts, former champions, and fans around the world. Nobody seemed to agree, and that disagreement only fueled even more curiosity. The biggest twist was still coming, because while Chimaev was publicly demanding another chance, another obstacle quietly stood between him and the championship. Several top contenders were building strong arguments of their own, creating a situation where even a former champion couldn't simply assume the next title shot belonged to him. Suddenly, the road back to Sean Strickland looked far more complicated than one bold warning, and the battle outside the octagon was becoming almost as intense as the fight that had already taken place. The conversation kept evolving from there because every passing day, without an official announcement, only made the uncertainty even greater. Chimaev had already delivered his challenge, but the UFC still held every card, and that meant the former champion could do nothing except continue applying pressure while the entire division waited for a decision. At the same time, Sean Strickland found himself in a position every champion eventually faces, choosing between the most dangerous opponent available or pursuing another matchup that could strengthen his reign without immediately stepping back into the fire. That single choice carried enormous consequences because whatever happened next would define the direction of the middleweight division for months. Fans immediately split into rival camps. One side insisted the razor-close title fight demanded an immediate rematch since neither man had clearly separated himself over 5 exhausting rounds. The other side believed championships should reward activity across the division instead of repeating recent contests, especially with several elite contenders quietly assembling impressive winning streaks. Every new debate added another layer of pressure, and suddenly the spotlight wasn't only on the fighters, it was also on UFC matchmakers responsible for deciding who deserved the next opportunity. Behind the scenes, analysts began studying every round from the championship fight in remarkable detail. Some pointed toward Strickland's disciplined pressure and calculated striking as the difference maker. Others highlighted Chimaev's relentless pace and moments of dominance that nearly shifted the contest in his favor. The more experts examined the performance, the less agreement they reached. Instead of settling the argument, every breakdown seemed to create another one. That constant disagreement kept the rivalry alive long after the final scorecards had been announced. Then, another fascinating possibility entered the discussion. If the UFC delayed the rematch long enough, would Chimaev accept another elite opponent simply to stay active? That question immediately sparked speculation involving several of the division's biggest names. A victory over another top-ranked contender could silence every critic demanding that he earn another title opportunity. At the same time, accepting such a dangerous fight carried enormous risk. One unexpected loss could push him much further away from championship gold and erase the momentum he still possessed despite losing the belt. It became a gamble with massive stakes, and everyone understood it. Meanwhile, Strickland faced his own complicated equation. Remaining champion brings constant pressure because every contender studies your strengths while searching for weaknesses. Every interview, every training session, and every public appearance becomes part of the story. The champion can never truly disappear because the next challenger is always watching. That reality meant Strickland couldn't ignore Chimaev's challenge forever, even if negotiations moved slowly or another contender briefly entered the picture. The warning had already been delivered to the entire MMA world, and fans would continue asking about it every time either fighter stepped in front of a microphone. As weeks passed, the rivalry transformed from a simple rematch request into something much bigger. It became a battle of confidence, patience, and psychological warfare. Chimaev projected complete belief that the next meeting would end differently. Strickland carried the confidence of the reigning champion who had already proven he could survive one of the toughest tests of his career. Neither side appeared interested in backing away from its position. That made every future interaction more meaningful than the last. Another layer added even more intrigue. Chimaev's reputation had always been built on unstoppable momentum. Before the title loss, opponents often entered the cage wondering if anyone could truly slow him down. Defeat changed that perception, but it didn't erase his dangerous skill set. Instead, it introduced something fans had never really seen before: a motivated version of Chimaev determined to answer every question raised after the first loss of his professional career. History has shown that elite fighters often return stronger after experiencing adversity, and supporters believe Boers could follow that same path. On the opposite side stood Strickland, a champion known for thriving whenever people doubted him. Throughout his career, he repeatedly embraced difficult challenges instead of avoiding them. That reputation made Chimaev's warning even more fascinating because many fans struggled to imagine Strickland intentionally stepping away from a fight capable of defining his legacy. Yet championship careers are rarely built on emotion alone. Timing, health, contracts, and promotional strategy all influence decisions that outsiders never fully see. Those hidden factors could ultimately determine whether this rivalry receives another chapter or remains frozen after one unforgettable battle. Suddenly, the future of the middleweight division rested on far more than confidence alone. It depended on negotiations, scheduling, recovery, rankings, and the UFC's long-term vision for one of its most competitive weight classes. Every element needed to align before the cage door could close once again. Until that happens, Chimaev's warning continues echoing across the MMA community. Some hear supreme confidence. Others hear frustration from a former champion desperate to reclaim what he lost. Either interpretation keeps the spotlight firmly fixed on both men. And that's exactly why this story refuses to disappear. Every interview, every social media post, every rumor, and every backstage update now feeds the same burning question. Will Sean Strickland answer Khamzat Chimaev's challenge, or will another contender unexpectedly change the championship picture before the rematch can ever happen? One official announcement is all it will take to turn speculation into reality, and when that moment finally arrives, the entire MMA world will be watching because the next move could ignite one of the biggest fights the UFC has to offer.